Hey guys. So I am going to read a story that I created in regards to the constructivism terms that we are studying in my foundations class. And so I'll start off with reading the story first, and then I'll explain what I learned about constructivism through the terms and through writing the story. So the story is called The Cherry Class. And this chapter is called Fifth Grade Isn't So Bad. Mrs. Cherry was the very best teacher I could have ever asked for. She was short and of medium stature. She was confident and beamed with joy every day when we walked in. My mom and dad always seemed to be annoyed with my sisters and I, but not Miss Cherry. She was always telling us how amazing we were when we trudged into the classroom with our energetic smiles. She always says, "Good morning, guys," or "What's up, fourth grade?" She made us feel at home, or at least like we were at our second home. Our field trip was coming up, and Mrs. Cherry asked that we do an activity related to our trip to BizTown. Mrs. Cherry had been telling us that we were going to work at our next field trip, like a real job. We were elated and at times skeptical because we weren't sure how to work or what it was even like to have a job. We were only 10. At any rate, we were excited. All of a sudden, there on the dot cam was a problem. A list of expenses. Expenses? I mean, I heard a lot of grown-ups say this word before, but never have I heard it at school. She puts up the story, and it reads, Alexander wants to add up all of his expenses for the month. He creates the following list. Groceries, $75. Rent, $1,200. Cell phone, $100. Electric, $80. Gas for car, $60. Alexander makes $16 per hour. How many hours will he need to work to cover all of his expenses for the month? How much extra hours should he work to pay for miscellaneous items? Mrs. Cherry says, "All right, class, I'm dividing you into 4 groups so you can collaborate to solve this problem." Me and my classmates were super perplexed. We moved to join our assigned groups while we chattered about how complicated school had become in 5th grade. I couldn't help to think that we were growing up way too fast. We're going on to chapter 2. Chapter 2 is called Paper or Plastic. Today was the day that we were going to BizTown. We got on the bus. I couldn't believe I was going to be an employee and work like a grown-up. Wow. Mrs. Cherry even said that we were going to be paid for our hours worked and could keep the money to buy something special, because this is what people do in the grown-up world. People work hard to make money, to buy things. I was going to be rich. I thought to myself that this has to be how it feels to go skydiving. It felt like a big elephant was doing jumping jacks in my belly. I could have jumped out of my seat. Finally, we were there at BizTown, and the director greeted us. After we completed our interviews, we learned what our jobs were. As they called my name, Genevieve Vincent, cashier. I leaped with elation as I walked to get my apron with my name on it. I was ready to work. As I walked to the register, I couldn't help but to think this was the best day ever. I began ringing up customers' groceries as they brought them to the counter. I remember Mrs. Cherry telling us that providing customer service at our job today will give us practice on how to treat others with respect in every area of our lives. Even if we decide to become a doctor or a lawyer or an entrepreneur, we had to be pleasant and respectful. Even when you have issues with your bills, friendliness and respect is what will get the problem solved, she said. I smiled and had small talk with every customer that came through my line. I know that they felt that their dollars were well spent. And that's where I kind of ended the story, because I feel like I made my point with all of the key terms that we're studying about constructivism. And just a few things or a few key notes that I really took away from these terms as a whole is that constructivism is really about collaboration. It's about being there. It's about tackling real world issues in the classroom. It's basically how I envision it is a big circle. And the learning process when it comes to a topic or any kind of issue should always be, explaining to the class exactly what you're going to be studying, and then making it relatable to the real world is really what I took away from it. And so when I wrote this story, I wrote it to really, I took a different angle and thought, okay, instead of writing about a student, which I did write about a student, I guess instead of writing so much about the terms and how a student would act if they're being taught the constructivism way, I said, well, I'll write a story about a teacher teaching constructivism with a main character being a student. And so I really try to hit on all those terms in my story. So I hope everyone enjoyed it. I hope that my point came across. I hope that that all of the key terms are clear. I try to make it so it was easy to find. And so, yeah, I feel like there was some other things I wanted to hit on. Sorry about this. Let me just pull it up here so I have it written down. Yeah, so the problem solving part or section that I included in my story was the word problem. So her putting up Mrs. Cherry, the character in the story, putting up the word problem on the board, and then having them be put into the groups to solve, critically think, and problem solve. They had to communicate with each other to solve the problem. I didn't include that in my story because I feel like that's I could have written a whole 10-chapter book, right? But I had to keep it condensed to the really important key points. I added some metaphors and analogies in there. Cooperative education, again, real world problems. I had them go on the field trip so that they could be in a situation where they may have to learn things in the moment rather than learning them from textbooks or from being told by the teacher. So that would be being the cashier for the day or having a job for the day at their actual field trip, the 5th grade field trip in my story. Yeah, so that pretty much is what I took away. That's what I learned about constructivism. It is really a rich strategy to use in your classroom. I think that considering how kids learn, that the more senses that we can activate in their learning, the more they take away and the longer it stays in their memory. And so, yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. I enjoyed writing it. So if you have any questions or anything like that, just leave a comment, and I will see you guys soon. Thanks for tuning in.